All right, strap in everyone, because today we are diving deep into the world of Elon Musk. And let me tell you, it's a wild one. Lawsuits, AI showdowns, and some seriously ambitious visions for the future. We're covering it all. We've got a mountain of sources, news articles, legal filings, even some SpaceX launch drama sprinkled in there. It's going to be a wild ride. But by the end of this, you'll know exactly why Elon Musk matters to you. And trust me, he does.
He really does. I mean, love him or hate him, you can't deny that the guy is a total game changer. Understanding Musk is basically like getting a sneak peek into the future of, well, pretty much everything. Technology, society, you name it.
Exactly. We're not just talking rockets and electric cars here. This is about self-driving cars, the whole social media landscape, even like the very definition of free speech online these days. But where do we even begin with a guy who's constantly making headlines? It's like every time you blink, there's another Musk story breaking.
Well, I think the best place to start is with his overall vision. You know, Musk isn't just motivated by money. He truly believes that he's building the future.
Right? Like colonizing Mars, changing how we get around. It's all pretty big picture stuff.
Exactly. And that ambition, that drive to revolutionize everything, well, that's often what lands him in hot water.
Yeah. It's like he's playing this high-stakes game of chess, and not everyone's a fan of his moves. Speaking of risky moves, can we talk about some of those legal battles he's been caught up in? Like that funding-secured tweet that landed him in trouble with the SEC, that was more than just a slap on the wrist, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely not just a slap on the wrist. That case actually set a major precedent for like how much power a CEO has to influence the stock market with, just their words. The SEC stepped in because they saw it as potentially misleading investors, which is a huge no-no.
Right, because that could really hurt everyday people who are just trying to invest their money responsibly.
Exactly. It's all about transparency and making sure that everyone's playing by the rules.
Makes sense. So then there's, of course, the whole saga with X, formerly Twitter. Talk about a roller coaster ride. Since Musk took over, it's been nonstop chaos for users, advertisers, and even employees. What do you think has been the most impactful change so far?
Honestly, it's tough to choose just one. I mean, you've got the lawsuits over those mass layoffs and the whole unpaid severance thing. And then there's the constant policy flip-flopping on content moderation. It's like every other day there's a new rule, a new controversy.
Yeah, remember that whole debacle when, what was it? Oh, yeah, when the insert specific example of a controversial tweet or moderation decision. I mean, it felt like the Wild West of social media out there.
Totally, and that's a perfect example of how Musk's decisions, no matter how chaotic they may seem, have a direct impact on what we see in our feeds. He's trying to walk this tightrope between, upholding free speech and protecting users from harmful content. But a lot of folks think he's, not exactly doing a good job at it.
Yeah, and it's not just about what we're seeing online. Like those mass layoffs, those are real people losing their jobs, their livelihoods. It makes you wonder about how much responsibility a CEO like Musk has to his employees, especially when he's making such drastic changes.
Absolutely. And beyond the human impact, there's also the financial side of things. Think about all those advertisers fleeing the platform because of the uncertainty and potential brand damage. It's a total financial mess right now, and it's really unclear if X will be able to bounce back from this.
So we've got lawsuits, social media chaos, but we can't forget about the whole AI war that's brewing. This isn't some sci-fi fantasy. This is happening right now, and Musk is right in the thick of it. On one hand, he's suing OpenAI, a company he co-founded, over safety concerns. But then on the other hand, he goes and starts his own AI company, XAI.
Yeah.
Isn't that a little, hypocritical?
Yeah, it definitely seems contradictory at first glance. I mean, he's publicly calling for a pause on AI development, warning about the potential for like existential threats, but then he turns around and builds his own powerful AI.
It makes you wonder, is he truly worried about those risks? Or is there some other strategy at play here?
It's hard to say for sure. Maybe he's thinking, if someone's going to develop advanced AI, it might as well be me, someone who understands the dangers. But it's a huge gamble with incredibly high stakes. I mean, imagine if his warnings about AI turning against humanity are right, and he's the one who unleashes it.
Wow, that's a pretty dark thought. So we've got this guy trying to colonize Mars, revolutionize transportation, and now he's potentially shaping the future of artificial intelligence. It's almost too much for one person to handle.
It definitely seems like a lot, even for someone like Elon Musk. But hey, maybe he's capable of juggling it all. Maybe he really can pull off all these seemingly impossible feats.
Okay, so he's got his hands in a lot of different pots, some definitely more controversial than others. But let's shift gears for a minute and talk about the companies that, made him famous in the first place.
Yeah.
Tesla and SpaceX. You can't deny the impact they've had.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Tesla has single-handedly accelerated the adoption of electric vehicles. They've pushed the entire auto industry toward a more sustainable future. And SpaceX, they've proven that private companies can compete with and even surpass government agencies when it comes to space exploration.
It's like a whole new era of space travel, but they've also hit some bumps along the way, right? We can't just ignore the controversies and challenges. Let's start with Tesla. What's the deal with all these autopilot investigations?
Right. So for those who might not know, Autopilot is Tesla's advanced driver assistance system, and it's been involved in a number of high-profile accidents.
Yeah, and those accidents are raising some serious questions about the technology's safety and reliability.
Exactly. Investigators are trying to figure out if the system malfunctioned or if it was driver error, and the implications are huge. I mean, if Autopilot is found to be unsafe, it could set back the entire self-driving car industry.
I read about that one crash where uh, insert shocking detail from a crash investigation or regulatory report. It's kind of terrifying to think that technology designed to make us safer could actually be putting us at risk.
It's a really complex issue, and the investigations are still ongoing, but it definitely highlights the need for rigorous testing and oversight when it comes to these new technologies, especially when they have the potential to cause harm.
Okay, so Tesla has its share of legal and ethical challenges. But what about SpaceX? I mean, they're launching rockets left and right, sending people into space. It seems like they're unstoppable.
They've accomplished some incredible things, that's for sure. But they also face their fair share of hurdles. Remember when the FAA grounded SpaceX's Starship launches multiple times? There were concerns about safety, environmental impact. It was a clash between Musk's move fast and break things, philosophy, and, the need for regulations that protect people and the planet.
Right, and that brings up a really important question. Who gets to decide how much risk is acceptable when we're talking about innovation?
That's a tough question, and one that we're going to be grappling with more and more as technology advances. And with someone like Musk at the helm, someone who's constantly pushing boundaries and challenging the status quo, well, it's bound to get even more complicated.
So we've covered a lot of ground. Lawsuits, AI, the ins and outs of Tesla and SpaceX. It's a lot to process, but I think it's important to remember that this is just the beginning when it comes to Elon Musk.
Totally agree. We've barely scratched the surface of his impact. And the story's far from over. So buckle up, because we're about to dive even deeper into the world of Elon Musk.
All right, so we've talked Tesla, SpaceX, AI. But there's one more piece of the Elon Musk puzzle we got to look at, and that's the whole saga with X, what used to be Twitter.
Yeah, it's been quite the ride, hasn't it? Mass layoffs, policy changes, advertisers jumping ship, revenue plummeting. It's hard to keep up with all the twists and turns.
It really is. It's like watching a high-stakes poker game where the rules keep changing, and Musk is the unpredictable player, like betting it all on one hand.
That's a pretty good analogy, actually. And it's not just a game for the tech elite. These changes have real-world consequences for how millions of us experience social media.
Absolutely. It's not just numbers on a spreadsheet. We're talking about people's jobs, the spread of misinformation, the whole power dynamic of online platforms. Remember when Musk first took over and promised to make X this, like, haven of free speech?
Oh, yeah. And that immediately ignited the debate about what free speech actually means on a platform owned by a private company. Is it about letting everything fly, even the harmful stuff? Or is it about creating a space where different voices can be heard without fear of harassment or censorship?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And Musk's approach has been, well, let's just say controversial. He reinstated all those banned accounts, including some that had been spreading some pretty nasty stuff.
Yeah.
That didn't exactly go over well with a lot of people.
Nope, it definitely didn't. There was a ton of backlash, with people accusing Musk of favoring a select few and ignoring the concerns of those who are most vulnerable to online abuse.
Right, and then there were the mass layoffs, which, as we discussed earlier, were not handled very well. It created this atmosphere of chaos and uncertainty, both within the company and among users.
Absolutely. And all that instability was made even worse by the constant policy changes and updates to the platform. It's hard for users to keep up, and it creates a real sense of distrust.
I've definitely noticed that myself. Every time I log on, it seems like there's a new feature or rule, and it's not always clear why these changes are happening or what the end goal is.
That's a good point. There's this lack of transparency, like Musk just making these decisions on a whim without really thinking about the consequences. And that kind of unpredictability is a big reason why advertisers are leaving, which, is bad news for X's bottom line.
Yeah, it's tough to see how a platform can survive when its revenue is drying up and its users are disappearing. It makes you wonder, Does Musk have a plan? Or is he just winging it?
That's the big question, isn't it? Is he some strategic genius playing the long game? Or is he just making it up as he goes along? Only time will tell, I guess.
Well, one thing's for sure, this whole X saga is a prime example of how difficult it is to manage a social media platform in today's world. It's like a microcosm of all those big debates we're having about free speech, online safety, and the role of technology in our lives.
And it highlights how much power individuals like Musk have in shaping these platforms, and by extension, shaping public discourse and how information flows.
So what does this mean for the average user? What should we be watching for as this whole thing plays out?
I think the most important thing is to be aware of the biases and algorithms that shape what we see online. It's easy to get trapped in those echo chambers and filter bubbles where we only see information that confirms what we already believe.
Right, and that's especially dangerous when we're talking about a platform like X, which has such a huge reach and influence. If we're not careful, we can end up in these information silos where we only get one side of the story.
Exactly. So it's crucial to be critical of the information we consume, to look for different perspectives, and to have respectful conversations, even with people who hold different views.
It's about being informed and engaged citizens, both online and offline. We can't just passively accept whatever's being thrown at us. We have to actively shape the digital landscape and make sure it reflects our values.
Absolutely. And it's not just about being careful about what we see in our feeds. It's also about holding those in power accountable. People like Musk, who have the ability to shape these platforms, need to be transparent about their decisions, and they need to be held responsible for the consequences of those decisions.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. The legal stuff, the AI landscape, the complexities of Tesla and SpaceX, and all the drama with X. But where does this all lead? What's the big picture?
I think the key takeaway is that Elon Musk, with all his quirks and controversies, is a force to be reckoned with. He's a visionary, a disruptor, and a catalyst for change.
Whether those changes are ultimately good or bad, well, that's still up for debate. But one thing's for sure. He's not going anywhere, and his actions will continue to have a ripple effect across many industries and aspects of our lives.
No doubt about it. And while we can't predict the future, we can arm ourselves with knowledge and critical thinking skills to navigate the world that Musk is helping to create.
So, as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of Elon Musk, I think the question we're left with is this. What kind of future do we want to build? And what role do we as individuals want to play in shaping that future?
Those are big questions, and I think they're ones that each of us needs to wrestle with, because the choices we make today, big or small, will determine the world we inherit tomorrow.
Man, we've covered a ton of ground in this deep dive. Legal battles, AI, the good and the bad with Tesla and SpaceX, and, well, the whole roller coaster that is X. It's like we took a whirlwind tour through Elon Musk's world.
It has been quite the ride.
Sure.
But, I think it's important to zoom out a bit, to step back from the individual events and look at the bigger picture.
Yeah, I like that.
What does Elon Musk's whole journey, his whole story, tell us about the forces that are shaping our future?
That's a really good question. I mean, he's more than just a CEO at this point. He's become this symbol of ambition, innovation, disruption, all wrapped up in one.
Exactly. And whether you're a fan or a critic, you got to admit, he's making us confront some pretty fundamental questions about technology, power, and the kind of future we're creating.
Okay, so let's unpack that a little bit. What are some of those big questions that Musk's story brings up for you?
Well, one that comes to mind is the whole idea of ethical boundaries in innovation. Like, how far is too far when it comes to pushing the limits of technology?
Right, because he's all about that move fast and break things mentality.
Exactly. But what happens when those broken things are, safety regulations, environmental protocols, or even people's jobs?
Yeah, that's a really important point.
Yeah.
And then there's the whole question of concentrated power. Musk's in control of multiple companies that have a huge impact on everything, from transportation to space travel to social media. Should we be concerned about one person having that much influence?
It's definitely something to think about, especially when you consider how his personal beliefs and biases can influence those companies. Think about his stance on free speech, for example, and how that's played out in the content moderation policies on X. What happens when the values of one person are amplified across platforms with millions of users?
It raises some serious questions about accountability and transparency. Should we expect more from powerful figures like Musk, in terms of explaining their decisions and considering the potential consequences?
Absolutely. And it's not just about Musk, really. It's a broader conversation about the role of tech leaders in our society. As technology becomes more and more integrated into our lives, we need to talk about how to ensure these advancements benefit everyone, not just a select few.
So how do we connect this back to the average person? It can feel kind of overwhelming to think about these big, abstract issues when you're just trying to live your life.
I think the takeaway is that we all have a responsibility to be informed and engaged citizens, even in small ways. Paying attention to how technology is being developed and used, supporting companies that align with our values, talking to our friends and family about these things, those actions can actually make a difference.
It's about recognizing that we're not just passive consumers of technology, right?
Yeah.
We have a voice, and we can use it to help shape the future.
Exactly. And the story of Elon Musk, with all its ups and downs and contradictions, reminds us that the future isn't set in stone. It's being written right now, and we all have a role to play in that story.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with this thought. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Challenge assumptions. Imagine different possibilities. The future isn't something that just happens to us. It's something we create together through the choices we make and the actions we take. And the more informed and engaged we are, the better equipped we'll be to navigate whatever challenges and opportunities come our way.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep learning.